5 years ago, Greta told us that humanity would come to an end unless we stop using fossil fuels. Turns out it didn't happen, and she deleted the tweet. My good friend Jack Posobiec's here with me today to talk about it because he tweeted about it. He says, Greta, why did you delete this? You can see the tweet on the screen and the date from 2018. And now you're getting fact-checked on this, Jack. What's going on?
So this is one of the weirdest of all the controversies I've been in. I mean, they're all weird, but this is one of the weirder ones because catching someone for deleting a tweet when you go on, it's one of the most fun things about Twitter.
Yeah.
It's when you can catch one of these people who's in a high position or has high influence, like a Greta Thunberg, and you catch them in a lie, you catch them in a misrepresentation, and then you catch them covering their tracks, right? And this is so great. So Twitter is not just a live feed, because Twitter is also an archive of things people said in the past. So I can go and tweet mine, anyone on any topic. And then, of course, there's also a timestamp. So this just makes for sort of the fun of, you have to look at Twitter as a video game. That's what I do.
Right.
And so we find this Greta Thunberg, and she had deleted, and someone had just found it right before I did and say, hey, wait a minute, Greta, it's been 5 years since this tweet, because it was a 2018 tweet. It's actually, I think, it was a June tweet, so it's not quite 5 years yet. So we're getting there, because I'll be accurate, right? I'll be accurate. Right. But we can see that the world is not ended. It's not coming any closer to ending, at least not through climate change, and maybe World War III kicks off, sure, but no, which again was another one that Media Matters got mad at me because I said that Greta Thunberg was ultimately responsible for the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Because my point was that I said the Germans probably shouldn't have listened to Greta. They should have listened to Trump when he said that you shouldn't put all your chips in on green energy in this Nord Stream thing, because if they pulled Nord Stream, you're done for. And so I pointed out, well, you shouldn't have listened to Greta. And then Media Matters. Oh, how dare you attack? And it's incredible to me. So now Newsweek.com has written a fact check of me going through this whole thing of, and what's amazing is they don't call me a liar in any of it. Right? They attack us for tweeting about all this. They said, they go,
hold on, Jack. You didn't lie. You asked a question. The tweet says, hi, Greta Thunberg. Why did you delete this? ?
Why did you delete this? Right. And so I've got her deleted tweet. I've got her screenshot of the deleted tweet. And I have an archive link, which stamped down that this existed on the internet at this time that she had tweeted that. And here's what's amazing is they're saying it's false because they say she didn't technically state that the world would end. It was that she wrote humanity would end unless we stop using fossil fuels. So apparently that's slightly different from saying the world would end. We said humanity would end, and therefore fact check false. And here's the interesting point is that and the reason the fact checks like this are used are that if this goes out, so Twitter doesn't really have this, they're kind of starting to, but Instagram, Facebook, some of these other platforms, you get slapped with a fact check. Now, all of a sudden you get put in the penalty box. It's like when you're playing hockey, you get put in the penalty box, 2 minutes for fighting, high sticking, whatever, that now your account isn't going to be able to propagate. People aren't going to be able to see your posts, even regardless of that post, even future posts that don't include anything about that will be covered up. So that post on my Instagram is now covered false information. So you have to click through.
That's
and
incredible.
Then there's an explanation.
Here's her tweet. A top climate scientist is warning that climate change will wipe out all humanity unless we stop using fossil fuels over the next
that's her tweet. That's what she wrote on Twitter 5 years ago.
Yeah. Quote. It's a
right
quote.
There.
And then she deletes it. She deletes it because it makes her look dumb. Now, I think the big question here, Jack, is why is she protected? Remember her little spat with Andrew Tate? Was that a month ago?
Yes. I think probably 2 months. Actually, I think they reference that in this article.
Right. And then everybody joked about after they, you know, had that little spat.
Which, by the way, her response was really stupid. It was like her response wasn't even all that necessarily
Wasn't it
uh,
about his, like,
adroit.
his genitalia or his nuts or something like that?
Yeah, yeah. It was just a very crass,
Right.
mean response. Which I mean, I go, okay, you can do that on
It was
social media,
small
but that's
wasn't it
not
small blank
exactly
energy?
right. Right. It's not
Yeah, he
not
has
exactly a witty
something like that?
retort or a comeback. Right. It's
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 kinda
something
like
that
the comeback that all liberal women use. It's, like, sexual and crass.
I wasn't gonna say it, but yes, it is literally the comeback that all liberal women use. They'll go straight to that. It's the
Right,
same one they'll say, if somebody is a gun owner, or if you own a truck,
right.
or if you do anything remotely masculine in your
Right.
life, that it must be because of this. Whereas,
Because you have small blank
you
energy.
know, right, I go shooting with my friends. I know people who I don't have a truck, but I know guys who own trucks. Right? But it's never even anything we talk about. It's we like guns because we like shooting guns. That's it. It's simple.
Right.
There's no when my 4-year old, who's, you might hear him, he's running around. He was at the playground the other day. You love the story, by the way. So we were at the playground, and there was one of the girls from church who, they kind of have a little puppy love thing going on, like a little kid crush kind of deal going on, is also at the playground. So she sees him and they're playing together. And then along comes another boy, and he's got a brand new remote control car, which this thing, and Taylor, you got to understand, this thing, it can drive on its side. It can drive on two wheels. It goes up and keeps driving. So guess what he does? He pulls off the playground. He's like, "Look, I'm gonna see you later." And he goes over and he's playing with the car. And then I said, Hold on a second. This is supposed to be like a play date." And then I saw the car, and now I'm playing with the car.
Right.
And she's going to her dad, "Why won't Jack come play with me?" And you have to understand, well, you have to understand, it's not against you, but this car can drive on two wheels. So,
Right.
you know, he's got guy brain.
Right.
That's all it is. It's guy brain.
Yep.
And it's not a social construct. It's something that we're all indelibly born with, spiritually, biologically, etc. So the idea that all liberal women try to take it back to that, which, by the way, also goes into something that I don't know about specifically Tate, but a lot of the guys talk about in sort of the manosphere, is about that women really are the ones that control that in our society. They control dating, they control marriage, they control reproduction in many ways. That in the society that we have today, it is very female driven. And so what Greta is actually doing is reinforcing female dominance by saying something like that to him, which obviously strikes to the, I mean, whether she realizes it or not. Which strikes to the heart of everything that those guys talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, the liberal woman mindset, which tends to be promiscuous, I think it's fair to say, does like to see the relationship between male and female as strictly sexual,
Right.
which
Well,
is
that
ironic
show, I mean,
because
on that
that's what
show,
they don't want.
whatever, that's they all talk about this. They talk about, these OnlyFans girls will go on. You should go on that, by the way, um,
Me,
because they're
on
they're bringing people on. Yeah, you should totally go on, because they are bringing on people to debate. And so there'll be these OnlyFans girls, and they'll say things like, "Yeah, oh well, it's great. This is female empowerment to be on OnlyFans. I'm independent. I'm independently wealthy. I don't have to work for a man, etc." And the one was even talking about how she looked at men as, she would form relationships with men in order to bring them down, in order to mess with their heads, in order to
right,
do all these, and as if they should, because men have been, in what the conspiracy theory known as wokeness, men have always been uh, oppressing women, and men have been keeping women down, chaining them to the kitchen, forcing them to take care of their children and love their families, and going
cook
out of the
food.
house and
Yeah,
working,
yeah,
and cooking food, just slaving away, while the man goes out and makes all the money, that which of course the women go and spend. But again, so, and then of course, people will ask them basic questions on the show, which, this is what I like about the show, actually.
is this the show that Michael
That
Knowles was just on?
Yeah, Mike, yeah,
Yeah,
Knowles was on,
I've been seeing
right,
clips of it.
and they Yeah, they couldn't understand when they asked him. They said, "Well, how did you meet your wife?" And he said, we met when we were about 10 years old, and we were in like the same school together, different classes, and dated a little bit in high school, broke up in college, got back together, got married, and the girls couldn't believe that story. They couldn't believe that a person would have a relationship like that. Meanwhile, I'm thinking like, I think like 80% of the people I know in real life have a story like that.
Right.
It's like all the people you went to high school with, and it's like, oh yeah, this guy ended up with this girl, or I never expected the two of them to get together. They never, they sat at different tables at lunch or whatever. But it works out, and everybody's happy, and that's just kind of how I would say probably even to this day, 80% of people, that's pretty much how you get married, especially if you were growing up in the same town, you live in the same town, etc. That's one of the most normal things to do.
Yeah.
But these OnlyFans girls on this podcast, they couldn't even wrap their minds around it, because in their world, it's women have to dominate, women have to get back at men. So anyway,
Right.
we're digressing, but I think it's a point that's important, is that it clearly Greta, it has now moved beyond simply climate change evangelism, right? Because what she does is obviously pagan worship. That she's now into female feminism and all this other stuff, which of course it all goes hand in hand.
Right. Yeah. So why does someone like Greta, or how does someone like Greta get the global protection stamp, where
That's really what's so
they are
amazing to me. That
completely backed up by
look, I
everything?
go after everybody on Twitter. I go after everybody on Twitter, right? And they'll say, "Oh, he picks on women and minorities," and it's like, really? You mean like Hunter Biden? Joe Biden, who's nominally a white Catholic male, right? It's hilarious. No, it's it's but Greta, there's certain people who are protected by the regime, and you
Mhm.
you can see this because of and it's illusory, right? There's no score next to somebody's name that explains what their power level is in the greater overall hierarchy of the regime under which we live. But you can start to see the outlets of it. You can start to see the facets of it, the edges of it, when you come across things like this, where you say something about Greta Thunberg, which is completely 100% true. And whether or not she was right about what the guy said, I don't care. She deleted the tweet, and this is what the tweet said. That's it. That's the end of the story. I don't care what the context is. I don't care what the rest of it is. We got you, right? But when it's her, suddenly there's a fact check, because she'd been used as an agent of change. She had been used. Remember, she leaves school. She does her transatlantic sailing mission. She's urging other people to get out of school, given a feted at the United Nations. And they have another one. They have like a that they've started now, who's sort of like Greta Jr. That's sort of the up and coming, and she's on TikTok. So Greta's Twitter, but now they have a TikTok Greta, who's sort of the next big thing. Which, to her credit, at least mentioned something about East Palestine, which Greta couldn't be anywhere found on. And they use these avatars, they use them as tools to perpetuate their power throughout our society. And so we can see these tools, and we can see the images of these tools being used. And if you point out a flaw, if you desecrate one of their idols, right? If you go in and commit an act of blasphemy against one of their leaders, then you get a response like this. This
Right.
is similar. It's similar to there's a guy on trial in New York City right now for posting memes of Hillary Clinton in 2016, memes, and they're putting him on trial, saying it was election interference. And they say, oh,
Oh,
well, he said something bad on a podcast. It's like, okay, whatever. But this is the United States of America, right? We
yeah.
don't, if somebody's walking down the street with a T-shirt you don't like, you can't, arrest him for that,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, people joke about, "Oh,
But
the
in this case,
Spanish
they do.
Inquisition, Inquisition, Inquisition." We have an Inquisition. There are
Oh yeah,
certain things you can't
oh yeah.
say. There are certain people you can't attack. They will come after you and destroy your life. We saw that. I'd love to get your comments on the leaked FBI memo.
I mean, so this is something that I've talked about, on a number of shows already. But look, should we be surprised? Should we be surprised that the first people, and I talked about this at CPAC actually, that the first people they start making lists of are the people that they consider just a little bit too Catholic? These guys, they're too Catholic.
Yeah.
You can be Catholic, but you can't be too Catholic.
You
No,
can
no,
be
no. This
Biden
is
Catholic,
it's a bit
Biden
much.
Catholic,
Yeah,
Pelosi
Biden
Catholic.
Catholic,
Yeah.
the cafeteria Catholic, that's fine, social justice Catholic, right? You're good to go, right? Let all the immigrants in, open the doors on the border, flood it all out. That's great. Those Catholics are supported. You can get taxpayer funding. But if you're actually following the precepts and you're trying to go along with canon law, and if you are practicing, God forbid, Latin Mass, the Roman Rite. This is it's too much, and
It's
now the
dangerous.
FBI is literally making lists of you, and organizations like they always have the three-letter organizations: FBI, SPLC, AD, whatever these organizations are. They're all operating off of the same sheet of music, because what they're doing is they are the enforcement arm of the regime, and they sit there. And instead of now, I could write an article on humanevents.com or the postmillennial.com about something that happened, or here's a list of Antifa members. Guess what? The FBI is never going to pick that up. They're never going to go and say, oh, these are all the identified Antifa leaders, huh? There's the one committing attacks on police facilities in Georgia. They're the ones that are going after Charlie Kirk up at UC Davis. So yeah, we're going to make sure to go after them. We're going to arrest them for crossing state lines for the purposes of causing a riot. This is literally the Riot Act, was written for the KKK originally. Those operations never get done. It never happens. In fact, they asked Merrick Garland about it. He said about the pro-life pregnancy centers, right? So keep in mind, you had a guy like Mark Houck who gets arrested because he got into a shoving match with a guy who was messing with his kid. Wasn't preventing anybody from going in, by the way. Gets into a shoving match with a guy who started it on his son. He gets the pre-dawn raid from the FBI, but you can go and firebomb a pro-life pregnancy center, and the Attorney General of the United States will say, oh, we can't do anything about that. Why? Because it happened at night.
Yeah.
Because it happened at night. The same way that the federal courthouse, which, by the way, he said also during his nomination hearings about the federal courthouse in Portland, which was attacked for over 59 days, a federal government facility, and no arrests, shooting at police, no arrests, none of this goes down. And then January 6th, you commit illegal trespass, and instead of getting a fine, you can get 14 months in jail.
Yeah.
So what I mean to say is that when I look at the leaked FBI memo, which supposedly retracted now, but of course, there's no real repercussions for this. We have to understand the situation that we're in. We are in a regime that understands that the people who are actual firm believers in a higher power, not the and let's be frank, there are a lot of people who walk around saying they're Christian, saying they're religious, that are completely atheists. They don't believe in any of it. They use it as a tool. They use it as a vehicle for their political agenda. So many of these churches that I see out there, especially Western churches, it's obviously just a left-wing group getting creating a tax shelter and using the imprimatur of well, I'm holding a Bible, so so I don't have to pay any taxes. And then what are they pushing? They're pushing gender surgery, they're pushing transitions, they're pushing pronouns, all sorts of insanity that has nothing to do whatsoever with Christianity. And those, of course, will never be threatened whatsoever. So the people they are going to target first are those that actually believe in the church, that actually believe in a higher power.
Yeah. Yeah, and I loved the Josh Hawley interrogation of the Attorney General.
It was wonderful.
He just laid
It
into
was
him.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And by the way, to point out, it shouldn't surprise us, right? Because every time you have a movement like these Bolsheviks get in somewhere, whether it be the Russian Revolution, whether it be Poland, whether it be Spain, the Spanish Civil War, who do they always, Argentina, Chile, who do they target first? Cuba, right? In the
Right.
Cuban Revolution, who do they target first? They target the priests, they target the nuns, they target the churches. It's the same thing that we've seen across the board all over the world.
Yeah. When the Catholic Church does her job and is united, it's for the fascists, for this communists, for the Marxists, for everybody. We are target number one because it's so powerful.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So, what's going on in Mar-a-Lago? I was in Mar-a-Lago a month or so ago, and I saw a tweet last night. You're sitting like at a table with Trump. What's going on?
I ended up having dinner with the president this week. We ended up getting we got a couple of weeks ago, we got an invitation to I said, "Hey, President Trump would like to have dinner with you and your wife. Would like to invite you down to Mar-a-Lago for a meal." And he's gearing up towards obviously an election that's coming up here in very, very short order. We're only about, think about it, really just about 18 months away. And he's already announced, he's declared. And so they said, would you be available on this night? And I said, well, I'm going to make myself available. So yeah, we flew down and we had an excellent meal with the 45th president of the United States. And I could tell you, by the way, for a fact, and I double checked this with Tanya, all right, because everybody's asking me already. I'm just going to put it out right now. He ate a cheeseburger with ketchup, no bun. The bun was there on the side, didn't touch it. 3 barbecue ribs, grilled jumbo shrimp that he loved, which was fantastic, by the way. And for dessert, bananas Foster with the caramel with
See,
sugar donuts. However, he didn't eat the donuts.
I thought, I was like, okay, he's going keto, he's going carnivore, until you got to the bananas Foster.
I think it's Trump keto. It's Trump keto. It's Trump keto.
Now, how is he in spirits? I thought I'd seen him in a bunch of clips. I'm like, oh, Trump looks a little older. He's not. But then when I saw him in Mar-a-Lago, whenever that was, a month or so ago, he was pretty fired up and he looked thin and kind of younger. He looked good. How did he look last night?
He looks so much thinner. I really have to say it. He's gotten thinner. What's up? Yes, Jack. You're going to the church library? All right. Well, you have fun at the church library, Jack. All right. So Jack and Nana are going to the church library. He just wanted to make sure I knew that.
Solid.
Church library, not bad.
Okay,
very solid, right?
So my number one question,
it actually just means the library near church. But
right.
But no, he was looking great, very sharp. And that's, when you see Biden up there stuttering around and can't seem to find his way around the place. I mean, we sat there and talked for at least 2 or 3 hours, and just names, dates, stories, personalities. I mean, at some point, I actually had to think about it and remind myself back in my head that is this guy really that, this age that I can see his age, is he really this old? Because doesn't feel like I'm talking to someone who's old. He's 76, but didn't have that feeling like I was talking to somebody who was older. It's like I'm just talking to you right now.
Yeah. No,
which I don't mean, I don't mean as a slight on anyone, but you know what I mean. There's usually like
Yeah.
a little, speak a little slower, etc. The other thing I got to say, and I'm just gonna put it out there, that this is one of my like pet peeves with people is, I don't talk about this much personally or publicly, but I have a thing with people who aren't like don't have good table manners. It just drives me nuts with when people talk with their mouth full of food, or they're taking big bites and they're all that stuff. Like, it just drives me nuts. It's just like a personal like tick that I have, basically. Living in China was not easy for me in terms of that. You really had to just kind of a lot of spiritual, mental discipline when I was living over there. And his table manners were just impeccable. Absolutely impeccable. I mean, the thin slices and small bites, chewed slowly, but then he didn't talk while we were eating at all. He finished his entire meal and then went back to speaking, which I've noticed, around different people. And I eat out in DC. I've met with a lot of these people, and it really, because he's a very personal guy, very charming guy. I think everybody knows that. But I just noticed that his table manners, you can tell this is a guy that's had dinner with, some very powerful people and knows how you're supposed to comport yourself.
Yeah. Now, did y'all bring up anything about, because my audience is conservative, Christian, and Catholic, anything come up about FBI, Catholics, Hauk, some of these trials of people being persecuted for pro-life and or Catholic beliefs? And do you think Trump will?
I wouldn't say that we
will help
I
us
wouldn't
or
say
not
that we
help us?
necessarily talked about any any specific cases or anything like that, but we talked in general about how these agencies have been weaponized against the opposition. And he did, by the way, he did notice that Tanya and I said grace actually right before we ate our meal, and then we did the sign of the cross. And he said, "Did you just give a little prayer?" And I said, "Well, I was a Catholic kid out of Philly area. That's what we do. So every time." And he goes, "Good. I like that. I like that." Um, and we talked about persecution, and we talked about the persecution of not only obviously the cases he's involved in here and there. We didn't get into any details of those, but just the way that anyone who's a conservative or a Trump supporter has been treated since 2016. People who just love their country, people who want to practice their religion freely. That's it, by the way. And people who want to engage in politics have become criminalized. And he said that from the very start, that is one of the things that he kind of admitted this, that he didn't even understand how bad it was when he became president the first time. That he didn't realize how far gone these agencies were. He thought, obviously, he fires James Comey a couple of months into the presidency. He says, "Look, this guy, I got no confidence in him." But there was an expectation that it was, hopefully it was just Comey, and that the next guy who came in would, clean up some of the issues. And then we find out that Chris Wray is even worse than James Comey, is the next guy who comes in, the next guy in
Yeah.
line. So you're starting to realize, and I think he's very much internalized this sense that, and coming as an informer intel officer myself, that this rot goes throughout all of these national security agencies, that they're using it to criminalize the opposition. They're using these same tools that normally, or I would say originally, were built for the war on terror. They were built for Al Qaeda, the Taliban, later ISIS, and then immediately, and this just like Ron Paul and a lot of the libertarians warned us
Right.
about,
They are
which
right.
I don't always agree with libertarians, but they were 100% right on this,
Yeah.
that it was immediately used against the political domestic opposition, the same tools that were supposedly for foreigners and foreign terror organizations. This is why, by the way, that they constantly are trying to they're desperate to prove some kind of connection between conservatives and Russia, because if they
Right.
can prove that it's actually a Russian operation, that from a legal perspective and a funding perspective, that allows them to tap into resources that the federal government has that you're not supposed to use against domestic opposition. But if you can prove that there's some, even if it's tangential connection to Russia, really any other country, but Russia is the one that they've chosen, then it enables them to use greater powers and greater structures against the opposition.
Yeah.
And it's something where I really think that he understands that it's, obviously they've gone against him as harshly as almost anyone, but he understands what's going on out there. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. And I mean, you have massive influence. You have over 2 million on Twitter. And this needs to be an issue running into the next presidential debates, because we're talking about not just January 6th situation. We're not talking about just pro-lifers, David Howe. We're talking about FBI lists of Catholics. This has to be an up and coming issue that needs to be in the debates. And I hope you
Well, he
can.
did actually play the have you heard the January 6th, the national anthem that he released, that
Mm-mm.
version?
No.
So he's got this verse number one on iTunes right now. It's racing
Okay.
up the charts on Spotify and some of these others. So and he played this for us in that evening, where it's a version of the national anthem remixed with Trump delivering the Pledge of Allegiance. But the national anthem is being sung by what they call the J6 prison choir. And the J6 prison choir, it's actually currently detained prisoners in Washington, D.C., singing over a prison phone that's then being recorded the national anthem.
Wow.
And then they remix that with him doing the Pledge of Allegiance. They put some ambiance music in behind it. And at the very end, they're all chanting USA, they're cheering. And what they're doing is that Trump has set up a fund so that if people go and if you pay to download it on iTunes, that the all the profits are going to the January 6th Legal Defense Fund. And so he recorded his part at Mar-a-Lago. They recorded their part literally on the prison block of these
Wow.
guys that are currently in detention for their political beliefs, right? Anybody else would have gotten, you would have gotten a fine and like a misdemeanor, and
Right.
you're on your way. Okay, right? You
Yep.
got fined. You weren't supposed to be here that day. Got it. This happens. How many? Amy Schumer and Jane Fonda have been arrested how many times for the exact same thing?
Right.
The Jane Fonda used to get arrested at 4 p.m. every Friday at the Capitol. You could actually know. Amy Judd was there one time, so you knew that you could go and meet her if you went to the Capitol at 4 p.m. because she would
Right.
always get arrested every Friday at 4 p.m. And so uh, I think he understands the power that's in this movement, the power that's in that very question that you just mentioned about persecution. And when he saw it, and I think it was, I'll admit, it was even surprising me that it went #1 in just a
Yeah.
couple of days on
Yeah.
iTunes. That there's a huge movement there, and when when you're Donald Trump and something goes #1, he's going to do more of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got to be an issue, and I mean, there's already tons of awareness about it, but I don't think we've seen it as like a political question of basically citizens, lay people are now afraid of the CIAs, the FBI's, et cetera, et cetera. Like this, our relationship to these agencies needs to be defined and restricted again.
Well, that's right, and it's going back to, this was the Church Commission all the way back in the 1970s, this idea of infiltration of groups. And I said this, by the way, and to go back to the FBI thing, I said, folks need to understand that the next level of this, and if it continues, is whether or not the memo was retracted, is infiltration. That
Yeah.
they will put federal agents to start infiltrating these groups, infiltrating online message boards, online. This is what they do,
Yep.
online chat groups. So you just think you're talking to somebody that you
Yeah.
agree with, and we agree on Vatican II, we agree on TLM, but then they'll start nudging you into
Right.
more and more radical conversations, and then suddenly, like we're in this case, like I said, there's this guy on trial in New York City over a meme, and they've got an informant who was in a chat group with him that shared all these messages of him, of people saying like oh, ha ha ha, imagine if people actually fall for this meme, ha ha ha. And they say, see, that's a conspiracy because you're joking about something in a private group. So
Mm.
we need to understand that it's very dangerous times that we're going into.
Yep.
And I appreciate that one of the things that we really did talk about at dinner was this persecution of Americans. And I think he, like a lot of people, didn't understand how bad these prosecutions were going for January 6th until some of the charges started coming out, until some of the sentences started to come out. And now we're seeing these videos, of course, being released by Tucker Carlson. And I have heard from people close to Speaker McCarthy's office that we're going to be seeing more video of January 6th coming out. Huge, just basically a database video that's going to be
Right.
coming out. What Tucker released is just the first sneak peek, but and not to necessarily take one side or the other, but to just show people the truth, to just show people what actually happened that day. That there's people who are confused, but a lot of people are just walking around taking pictures of Statuary Hall, taking selfies with police officers in some cases.
Yeah.
And those people should not be treated as some kind of violent terrorist. But of course, if the media can turn someone walking around Statuary Hall into a violent terrorist, then imagine what they can do to someone who is what they would consider a radical Catholic or an extreme Catholic, someone who, and you see it, you see it in the Atlantic, you see it everywhere. Which, by the way, if you remember, and I know I shared this at the time, that Atlantic magazine article that talked about how the rosary became a weapon was cited as a source, was cited as a footnote source for the FBI in targeting these groups. And they said, well, look, we see that these extreme Catholics are using the rosary as a weapon now, and we're going to use that to inform our law enforcement as we look for radicals in these churches. And so we might laugh at those articles and we say, oh, that's silly, that's funny, but
Right.
or laugh at something that like the Southern Poverty Law Center or these other groups write. But if people in power are then using that in a legal proceeding, even as crazy as it sounds, right? It's you're still going to end up in the gulag one way or the
Right.
other, and they'll
Yeah, they're going
say,
to say the
and
rosary is
when
a supremacist sign, and you have it posted on
right,
your back of your car and hanging from
hey,
your
go read.
dash, and
People need to pick up their Solzhenitsyn. People need to pick
yeah,
up their stories about what happened in Russia, because guess what? Every single one of those people went through trial too. They were charged and they were put on
mhm,
trial, and they were given their day in court, and then they got their sentence. And they said,
yep,
"Whoa, everyone here is no, we don't throw people in prison here. We give everyone their conviction." That was in China too today, right? They put you
right,
on trial, but from my wife Tanya, who and she's, having been born in the Soviet Union, one of the things that she points out is that even in the West today, she said it's amazing that you still have your defense lawyers, and you have legal funds, and you even have an opportunity to defend yourself. Back home, no, not at
right,
all. You kind of just get informed of what the charges are, and then informed of what your sentence is, and that's about it.
yep,
So we can go down that road if we want to, right? And
right.
that's
I don't
I
want
think
to.
that's something with President Trump, that when you talk about, can you support a guy like this? And what about something they said here? Or what about this comment? I say, it's not about him as a person. It's about doing the right thing for our country and where we're going to go in 10 years and 20 years and 30 years, because there's two doors right now for us. One of which is back to the republic that we love, where we have pluralism and freedom of speech and freedom of religion, and the other one is a very dark road, and we're currently on that. And I don't see anybody else around that's actually standing up and saying they will do something about it, or that has the ability to actually do something about it.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks for all your insights and your time. I appreciate this. You want to go medieval with me? You want to get radical and do some Latin right now?
Oh, I'd love to. I love it.
You want to get just totally, what's the word?
Totally.
Traditionalist.
Look, man, I'm already on the list anyway. So
All right. All right. So let's do the Our Father. You want to do it all together, or do you
let's do
want to
it.
do half and halves?
Let's do it together.
I'll do it all together. Okay. Oremus in nomine Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti.
Filii et
Amen.
Spiritus Sancti. Amen.
Pater noster, qui es in
Pater noster, qui
celis,
es in caelo,
sanctificetur nomen tuum,
sanctificetur tuum,
adveniat regnum tuum,
adveniat
fiat
tuum,
voluntas tua, sicut in cielo et in
sicut in
terra.
cielo et in terra.
Panem nostrum quotidianum da nobis
Quotidianum
hodie,
da nobis hodie,
et dimite
et
nobis
dimitte
debita
nobis
nostra,
debita nostra,
sicut et nos dimittimus
sicut nos
debitoribus
debitibus
nostris,
debitoribus nostris,
et ne nos
et ne
inducas in
nos
tentationem,
inducas in tentationem,
se libera nos a malo.
nos a
Amen.
malo.
Nomine Patris et
Amen.
Filii
Et
et
Spiritus
Spiritus Sancti.
Sancti.
Amen.
Amen.
All right, Jack
Go medieval.
Posobiec,
Go medieval.
Poso, promo code Poso. There
That's
he
right.
is.
Never Tanya. Only promo code POSO, mypillow.com. There is no promo code Tanya. That's a conspiracy theory. It's fake news, deep fake, treachery.
Awesome. All right. God bless. Remember, our Lord Jesus Christ said, "You're the light of the world and the salt of the earth." So go out there and be salty. God bless. Thank you, Jack. See you next time.
God bless. Appreciate it, man. Take care.